I did something crazy. I bought us tickets. Yeah, you heard me right. I bought tickets for the exact same flight she was planning to take with Brandon. A romantic getaway to Paris? Fine. I'll join in on the fun. The next morning, I woke up early, made her coffee, and casually dropped the news. Hey babe, I've got a surprise for you. You know how we've both been busy lately? Well, I thought we could use a weekend to ourselves, so I got us tickets to Paris. Just the two of us. I swear. The look on her face was priceless. She almost dropped her mug. Paris? This weekend? She stammered, her eyes wide. I gave her my best smile. Yeah, thought it would be a nice escape for us. There was a long, awkward pause before she forced a smile back. That's amazing, honey. I can't believe you did that. She hugged me, but I could feel the tension in her arms. She was panicking, I knew it, probably thinking about how to wriggle out of this mess. I couldn't wait to see how she'd try, and so the game began. Alina tried her best to act normal in the days leading up to the trip, but I could see right through her. Her smiles were too forced, her laughs too loud, and every time she thought I wasn't looking, she'd be glued to her phone, probably texting Brandon, trying to figure out how to untangle this disaster. She didn't have a clue that I knew about the affair. Not yet. I let her stew in it. Every time she tried to come up with some excuse to get out of the trip, I shot her down with a smile. But honey, I think my mom needs help with something this weekend. She tried, her voice a little too sweet. Nonsense, I said, giving her that casual confidence I knew would make her squirm. Your mom will be fine for a couple of days. We need this trip, Alina. Just the two of us. I emphasized the words, letting them hang in the air like the sword over her head. And so the day came. She packed her bags, moving around the house like a shadow of herself. I knew she was trying to figure out what to do. Cancel on Brandon? Lie to him? She was too smart to let things fall apart so easily. But this time I had her cornered. She had no idea what was coming. At the airport, she was quieter than usual. Normally, Alina loved to talk about nothing. Ceaseless chatter about work drama or what her friends were up to. But that day, nothing. Just silence and the occasional fake smile. I played the part of the doting husband, holding her hand and making small talk. It was almost too easy. When we got to the gate, I spotted him immediately. Brandon. I had seen his face in her phone. She'd saved his contact with some ridiculous emoji, like she was a teenager or something. There he was, standing off to the side, checking his phone, oblivious to what was about to happen. Alina must have noticed him too because she froze. Her hand tightened in mine for a split second before she quickly let go, pretending to rummage through her bag. I could feel the panic rolling off her in waves, but I just kept smiling, acting like nothing was wrong. As we boarded the plane, I made sure to take the window seat, so she had no choice but to sit next to me. I watched her fidget with her seatbelt, her eyes darting around the cabin. I knew she was looking for him, trying to figure out how to avoid him without making a scene. But she didn't have to wait long, because guess who had the seat right next to us? Brandon. I didn't even have to act surprised. I turned to him, flashing a friendly smile as he slid into his seat, looking more uncomfortable than a man on fire. Oh, what a coincidence. You're headed to Paris too? I asked, my voice dripping with fake cheerfulness. Alina's face went pale. Brandon, for his part, tried to keep it together, but he was sweating bullets. He clearly hadn't expected this. None of them had. Why, yeah, Brandon stammered, clearly caught off guard. Business trip. The lie came out so quickly, I almost laughed out loud. Alina cleared her throat, trying to regain control. Oh wow, what a small world, she said, her voice too high-pitched to be casual. She wouldn't even look me in the eye. I leaned back in my seat, the smile never leaving my face. Business, huh? Well, maybe we can all get dinner while we're there. I'm sure Alina would love that, I said, glancing at her. She looked like she was about to choke. The tension in that row was thick enough to cut with a knife, and I was enjoying every second of it. For the next few hours, the flight was nothing but silence. Alina was glued to her phone, texting furiously, probably trying to figure out how the hell to fix this. Brandon just stared straight ahead, like a deer caught in the headlights. And me? I was having the time of my life. The reality of it all was finally starting to hit her. There was no escape now. No more lies she could spin to cover up her betrayal. I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I played her game, and now she was the one losing. Somewhere over the Atlantic, she leaned in close to me, her voice low. "Can we talk? Alone?" she whispered, her words trembling. I raised an eyebrow, pretending to think about it for a moment. "Sure. We'll talk when we get to Paris," I said, turning away from her and closing my eyes like I was going to take a nap. The truth was, I wasn't sure what I was going to do when we landed. I knew I'd confront her. That much was certain. But would I end it right there? Or would I let her squirm a little longer? Either way, she wasn't getting off easy. As the plane soared through the sky, so did the thoughts in my head. The woman sitting next to me, the one I'd shared a life with for 8 years, was a stranger now. A liar. A cheat. And soon, she was going to face the consequences of everything she had done. She thought she could outsmart me. She thought she could juggle 2 lives without me knowing. But she was wrong. And in Paris, she was about to learn just how wrong she'd been. When we landed in Paris, I could feel Alina's desperation growing by the second. She hadn't said much during the flight, and neither had Brandon. The silence between them was deafening, like the calm before a storm. I watched her out of the corner of my eye as we moved through the airport, her steps hesitant, her mind clearly racing to come up with a plan. But what could she say? She was trapped, and she knew it. The romantic weekend she had planned with her side piece had turned into a nightmare. I could practically hear her thoughts screaming, trying to figure out how she could fix this without making everything worse. But there was no way out for her now. We grabbed our bags and started heading toward the exit, with Brandon awkwardly trailing behind us. He looked like he wanted to disappear. I bet he'd give anything to not be in Paris at that moment. And honestly, that just made it all the more satisfying. "Why don't we head to the hotel?" I suggested casually, as if everything were normal. Alina looked at me like she wanted to say something, but all that came out was a weak nod. "Yeah, sure," she muttered. Our hotel wasn't far from the airport, just a short taxi ride away. The 3 of us piled into the back seat of the cab, the tension suffocating. I made small talk with the driver, pretending like nothing was wrong, while Alina and Brandon sat in silence, exchanging nervous glances. They probably thought I was some oblivious idiot. Let them think that. The longer they squirmed, the better. When we arrived at the hotel, I stepped out first, holding the door open for both of them. "After you," I said, the smile on my face never wavering. Brandon mumbled something about needing to check in separately, but I waved him off. "Don't be ridiculous. You're already here with us. Let's make it a group trip." "No need to be shy," I said, my voice dripping with false kindness. Alina shot me a look, part panic, part confusion. She still didn't know how much I knew, and I wasn't ready to tell her. Not yet. Inside the hotel lobby, I casually strolled to the front desk and checked us in, making sure to book the romantic suite I'd originally reserved for Alina and me. The irony was almost too good to be true. Meanwhile, she stood behind me, her phone in hand, texting Brandon, no doubt trying to come up with some excuse to explain why her husband and her lover were suddenly on the same vacation. Once we were in the room, the tension snapped. Alina shut the door and immediately turned on me, her voice a mix of anger and desperation. "What the hell is going on, Jack?" she hissed, dropping the act of the loving wife she'd been pretending to be for years. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms, enjoying how quickly her mask had slipped. "What do you mean, honey?" I said, my voice calm, mocking her. "I thought we were here for a romantic weekend. Just the 2 of us. And Brandon, of course." Her face paled. The mention of his name hit her like a slap across the face. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For the first time, she was speechless. I stepped forward, my smile fading. "I know, Alina. I've known for a while now. All the late nights, the secret texts, the trips you've been taking behind my back. I know everything." My voice was cold, each word carefully measured. She blinked, trying to find something, anything to say. Jack, it's not what you think, she started. But I cut her off with a bitter laugh. Not what I think? I repeated. You think I don't know about Brandon? You think I didn't see those messages about your little Paris getaway? Do you really think I'm that stupid? She flinched at my words, her eyes darting around the room, looking for an escape. I was going to tell you, she stammered, her voice shaky. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to get this far, Jack. You have to believe me. I laughed again, louder this time, the sound harsh and bitter. Didn't mean for it to get this far? Really, Alina? So what, you just accidentally booked a trip to Paris with him? You just accidentally lied to my face over and over again? Come on, give me a break. Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't falling for it. Not this time. I'd seen that act before, the way she could cry on command to get out of any situation. It worked before, but not anymore. This wasn't just some small lie or some petty argument. She had ripped our life apart with her betrayal, and I wasn't going to let her wiggle her way out of it with crocodile tears. I never wanted to hurt you, she whispered, wiping at her face. I love you, Jack. I do. I don't know what happened. It was a mistake. A mistake, I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. You didn't accidentally end up in Brandon's bed. Alina, that was a choice, and now you have to live with it. She sank down onto the bed, covering her face with her hands, sobbing softly. I stood there, watching her, feeling a strange mix of anger and sadness. I should have felt more. I should have felt heartbroken. But in that moment, all I felt was numb. I had loved this woman for 8 years. I had built a life with her, trusted her, believed in her. And now, I didn't even recognize the person sitting in front of me. But I wasn't finished with her yet. We'll talk more later, I said, my voice cold. Right now, I think you need to explain things to Brandon. I'll be downstairs when you're ready to stop lying. And with that, I walked out, leaving her alone with the mess she had created. As I stepped out of the room and into the hallway, the adrenaline still pulsed through my veins. I could hear Alina's muffled sobs behind the door, but I didn't care. Not anymore. I needed air. I needed space. But more than that, I needed to confront the other piece of this ugly puzzle, Brandon. I took the elevator down to the lobby, my mind racing with thoughts of how this would go down. A part of me wanted to punch the guy in the face, but I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. No, this wasn't going to be a brawl. I was past that. I wanted answers, and more than anything, I wanted to see the look on his face when he realized just how deep in trouble he was. Brandon was sitting alone at the hotel bar, nursing a drink. His posture was tense, his shoulders hunched over as if he was trying to disappear into the seat. I could tell he was waiting for the inevitable. The coward hadn't even left the hotel. What a joke. He had to know this confrontation was coming. I walked over and slid onto the stool next to him. He glanced at me, his face pale, and then quickly looked away, pretending to be interested in the drink in his hand. I could see the guilt written all over him. Brandon, I said, my voice low but firm. We need to talk. He didn't look at me, just took a slow sip of his drink. Look, man, I didn't know she was still with you. I cut him off, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Didn't know? You didn't know she had a husband? You really expect me to believe that? I leaned in closer, my eyes narrowing. You've been sneaking around with my wife for how long now? Months? A year? And you didn't know? He finally turned to face me, his expression one of forced calm, but I could see the sweat on his forehead. I didn't mean for this to happen, Jack, he said, his voice shaking slightly. We met through work, you know? One thing led to another, and one thing led to another, I repeated, mocking him. That's your excuse? You accidentally fell into bed with my wife. He winced, clearly not expecting me to throw his words back at him. Good. Let him feel the weight of this. Let him squirm. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper now. I really am. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I sat back, shaking my head in disbelief. You didn't want to hurt anyone? What did you think was going to happen, Brandon? Did you think you'd just keep sneaking around with her and I'd never find out? Or were you planning on running off together eventually? He swallowed hard, glancing away again. No, it wasn't like that. We weren't planning on leaving you or anything. It was just, he trailed off, clearly struggling to find the right words. There weren't any. Not for this. It was just what? I pressed, my voice rising. Fun? A fling? A distraction from your pathetic little life? What was it, Brandon? Because whatever it was, it's over now. You get that, right? He nodded quickly, his hands trembling slightly as he set his drink down on the bar. I get it, man. I do. I'm sorry. I stared at him for a long moment, letting the silence stretch between us. He was pathetic, weak, the kind of guy who sneaks behind someone's back because he doesn't have the guts to face the consequences of his actions. You know, I said, my voice quieter now, I didn't come down here to fight. I'm not going to hit you, if that's what you're worried about. That would be too easy for you. No, I want you to feel this. I want you to live with what you've done. He didn't say anything, just stared down at the bar, his face flushed with shame. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I trusted her. I continued, my voice steady but filled with the bitterness I'd been holding back for so long. I built a life with her, 8 years, and she threw it all away for what? For you. Brandon opened his mouth to respond, but I held up my hand, stopping him. Don't. I don't want your excuses. I don't want your apologies. I just want you to understand something. This, what you've done, it's not going to end well for either of you. He looked up at me then, his eyes wide with something that looked like fear. What do you mean? I leaned in, my voice barely a whisper now. You think this is over just because I know? You think she's going to choose you over me? You think she's going to leave everything behind to run off with some guy who can't even look me in the eye when I'm sitting next to him? He swallowed hard again, clearly uncomfortable with where this conversation was going. Good. He should be uncomfortable. He should be terrified. She's not going to choose you, I said, my voice cold and certain. She's going to try to fix things with me. And you're going to be left in the dust. Brandon's face turned a shade paler, and for a moment, I thought he might throw up. I didn't care. I wanted him to feel that weight, the crushing realization that he wasn't the one in control here. He never was. I don't know what's going to happen next, I said, standing up and grabbing my drink. But whatever it is, I'll be the one making the decisions. Not you, not her, me. I walked away without another word, leaving Brandon to stew in his own guilt and fear. As I headed back toward the elevator, I could feel the anger rising again. But this time it wasn't just anger at him. It was anger at Alina, at everything she had done, everything she had destroyed. She thought she could have it all. Her husband, her lover, her secret life. But she was wrong. By the time I reached our hotel room, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. When I stepped back into the hotel room, the atmosphere felt suffocating, thick with tension. Alina was sitting on the edge of the bed, her face blotchy from crying, her eyes red-rimmed. I didn't feel an ounce of pity for her. Not anymore. Whatever guilt she was drowning in, she deserved every bit of it. Jack, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if saying my name softly would somehow make everything less real. Can we talk? Please. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it for a moment, looking at her with a mix of disgust and exhaustion. I didn't respond right away. Letting her sit there in her own silence, waiting for me, felt like the kind of control I hadn't had for months, maybe even years. You want to talk now? I said slowly, my voice low but sharp. After everything, now you want to talk? She flinched but nodded, wiping her face with trembling hands. I know I've messed up. I know I've hurt you, Jack. But it wasn't supposed to be like this. Her voice cracked, and for a moment, she looked like a child caught in a lie, not a grown woman who had just wrecked her marriage. I let out a bitter laugh. Wasn't supposed to be like what, Alina? You weren't supposed to get caught? That's the only thing that went wrong, right? If I hadn't found out, you'd be in Paris with him right now, living your little fantasy while I sat at home like an idiot. She shook her head quickly, her hands clenched into fists on her lap. No, it's not like that. I wasn't planning on leaving you, Jack. I swear. I don't know. I got lost in everything. I was feeling so disconnected from you, and Brandon, he made me feel. Made you feel what? I interrupted, stepping closer, my anger bubbling just beneath the surface. Wanted? Special? Like you're some kind of victim in all this. Her lip quivered, but she kept going, like she had rehearsed this in her head 1,000 times. I'm not trying to make excuses, Jack. I know what I did was wrong. I didn't know how to tell you that I was unhappy. You weren't there for me the way I needed you to be. And, stop right there, I snapped, my fists clenching at my sides. Don't you dare try to turn this around on me. Don't act like I wasn't there for you. You had everything, Alina. A husband who loved you, who worked his ass off to give you a good life. But that wasn't enough for you, was it? You needed more. You needed Brandon. Her eyes filled with tears again, and for a second, I almost believed her. I almost believed that maybe she really was lost, that maybe I had failed her somehow. But then I remembered those messages, those lies, that smug little smile she wore every time she thought she was getting away with it. You made a choice, I said, my voice cold and steady. You chose him. You chose to lie to me, to sneak around behind my back, to make me look like a fool. So don't sit there and try to act like you're the victim in this. Alina stared down at her hands, tears dripping onto her lap, but she didn't speak. I could tell she was searching for the right words, the words that would somehow make this all go away. But there weren't any. I let out a deep breath, pacing the room, my mind racing with everything that had happened over the past few days. I had planned this trip to Paris to catch her in the act, to confront her and make her see the reality of what she had done. But now that we were here, now that everything was out in the open, I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. I turned back to her, my eyes narrowing. Why him, Alina? What was it about Brandon that was worth throwing away everything we built? She hesitated, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. I don't know, she said quietly. It just happened. He was there and I was lonely, and one thing led to another. I never meant for it to get this far, Jack. I didn't want to hurt you. Didn't want to hurt me? I scoffed. You didn't want to hurt me, but you kept seeing him. You planned a trip with him. You lied to my face for months. How is that not hurting me, Alina? How is that not choosing to hurt me over and over again? Her face crumpled, and she let out a soft sob, her hands covering her face. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'm so sorry. The words hung in the air between us, but they felt empty, hollow. What was she sorry for? Sorry for getting caught? Sorry for ruining our marriage? Or sorry because now she had to face the consequences of her actions? I stood there, watching her cry, and I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was just done. Done with the lies, the betrayal, the games. Done with her. I don't think you're sorry, I said quietly. I think you're scared. Scared because now you don't get to have it both ways. Scared because you finally have to face the fact that you messed up, and there's no way to fix it. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, her eyes wide with desperation. Please, Jack, she whispered. Don't give up on us. We can fix this. I'll do anything. Just don't leave me. I stared at her for a long moment, the weight of her words sinking in, and then I shook my head. I didn't give up on us, Alina. You did. The room fell silent, her sobs the only sound echoing between us. I turned toward the door, my hand resting on the knob. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't staying here with her. I'm leaving, I said, my voice calm but final. You can stay here in Paris. Enjoy the trip with Brandon. It's what you wanted, right? She jumped up, rushing toward me, her hands grabbing at my arm. No, Jack, please don't go. I made a mistake. I love you. I looked down at her, pulling my arm out of her grasp. Love? You don't even know what that word means. And with that, I walked out the door. As I stepped out of that hotel room, leaving Alina behind, something inside me shifted. It was a strange feeling, like the weight I'd been carrying for months had finally lifted. But instead of relief, there was just emptiness. I didn't feel victorious, and I didn't feel strong. I just felt tired. Tired of the lies, the betrayal, the whole damn mess. I walked through the hotel lobby, ignoring the curious glances from strangers. For all they knew, I was just another guy on vacation in Paris. But inside, I felt like my world had just imploded. It's funny how life can keep moving on around you while everything inside you is crumbling to pieces. The cool Paris air hit me as I stepped outside, and for a moment, I just stood there, staring at the bustling streets. The city of love, they called it. What a sick joke. I chuckled to myself, though there was no humor in it. Paris was supposed to be our romantic getaway, but instead, it had become the scene of my marriage's final act. I didn't have a plan. Hell, I didn't even know where I was going. All I knew was that I couldn't be in that room with her any longer. The sight of her, the smell of her perfume, the sound of her crying. It all made me sick to my stomach. So I walked. No destination, no purpose, just walking. My mind kept replaying her words. I didn't mean to hurt you, Jack. I love you. Love. What a twisted concept. If that was love, then I wanted no part of it. She didn't love me. She loved the comfort, the stability, the fact that I'd always been there, predictable, reliable. And while she'd been living her double life, I'd been the fool in the dark, blindly trusting her. I found myself wandering into a small cafe, one of those cozy little spots that tourists flock to. I ordered a coffee, though I didn't really want one, and sat by the window, staring out at the street. People passed by, laughing, chatting, holding hands. I envied them, their normalcy, their oblivion to the kind of pain that came with betrayal. As I sipped the bitter coffee, my phone buzzed. I didn't even have to look to know it was Alina. She'd probably been calling and texting nonstop since I left. I'd silenced the phone hours ago, not wanting to hear her desperate pleas or see her pathetic apologies pop up on the screen. She could keep calling. It didn't matter anymore. But curiosity got the better of me, and I glanced at the screen. Sure enough, a dozen missed calls and messages, each one more frantic than the last. Jack, please come back. We need to talk. I'm sorry. Please, just come back so we can fix this. I love you. I made a mistake, but we can get through this. I put the phone down and shook my head. She still didn't get it. There was no fixing this. You don't come back from something like this. Once trust is broken, it's shattered. You can try to glue the pieces together, but it's never the same. And the thing was, I didn't even want to try. Not anymore. As I sat there, staring out the window, I started thinking about the 8 years we'd spent together. The good times, the bad times, the promises we'd made. I truly believed we were solid, that we were one of the couples that could make it through anything. But Alina had proven me wrong. She'd shown me that no matter how much you love someone, it doesn't mean they'll love you the same way in return. And that's when I realized something. I deserved better. It wasn't about revenge or getting even. It wasn't even about making her feel the pain I was feeling. It was about moving on, letting go of the toxic mess she had created and starting fresh. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't trapped anymore. I didn't have to keep playing the role of the heartbroken husband, trying to pick up the pieces of a broken marriage. I could walk away, and that's exactly what I was going to do. I stood up from the table, leaving my half-empty coffee behind, and walked back out into the street. The city buzzed around me, alive with energy, but I was lost in my own thoughts. Divorce. The word used to scare me, but now it felt like freedom. It was the only logical step forward. There was no point in dragging this out, no point in pretending we could salvage what was left. As I walked back toward the hotel, I knew what I had to do. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. Alina had made her choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. This wasn't just about punishing her. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. When I reached the hotel room, I didn't hesitate. I opened the door, and there she was, sitting on the bed, still crying, still clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. She looked up when she saw me, her face hopeful for a moment. "Jack, stop," I said, cutting her off. There's nothing left to say. She stood up, stepping toward me, but I held my hand up to stop her. "I'm done, Alina. Whatever this was, it's over." Her face crumpled. The hope in her eyes extinguished in an instant. "Jack, no, please. We can fix this, I know we can." I shook my head. "No, we can't. You made sure of that." She broke down, sobbing again, but this time, it didn't affect me. I was numb to it now. I walked over to the small desk in the room, grabbed a piece of hotel stationery, and started writing. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm writing down the name of a good divorce lawyer," I said, without looking up. She gasped, like the word itself had knocked the wind out of her. "Divorce?" "Yes, Alina, divorce. This marriage is over." She stood there, staring at me, her face a mix of disbelief and panic. "You can't just walk away like this. We've been together for 8 years. We have a life together." "Had?" I corrected her, standing up and handing her the piece of paper. "We had a life together, but you threw it away." She looked down at the paper, her hands shaking, and then back up at me. "Please, Jack, I love you." I met her gaze, my voice calm and final. "No, you don't. You love the idea of me, of the life we built. But if you really loved me, you wouldn't have done what you did. And now it's too late." I turned toward the door, ready to leave this chapter of my life behind. As I reached for the knob, I heard her sob behind me, but it didn't stop me. "Goodbye, Alina." I closed the door behind me, the soft click sounding final, like the last page of a book slamming shut, only there would be no sequel to this story. The air outside the room felt lighter somehow, but the weight in my chest was still there, a dull ache that would take time to fade. I could hear Alina's sobs through the door, muffled but persistent, like the echoes of all the lies and broken promises she had spilled over the years. I didn't look back. Walking down the hall, I felt the gravity of my decision settle in. Divorce. The word echoed in my head, but it didn't fill me with fear or regret. Instead, it felt like a strange kind of liberation, a clean break from the mess that had consumed my life. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad either. I was simply done. Done with her. Done with the lies. Done pretending everything could be fixed. As I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed again. I glanced down, expecting another desperate message from Alina, but it wasn't her this time. It was Brandon. "Jack, can we talk? Please. I owe you an explanation." I stared at the message for a long moment, debating whether to respond. Part of me wanted to tell him to go to hell. What could he possibly say that would make any of this better? Nothing. But another part of me, the part that craved some sense of closure, was curious. What did he think he could explain? Did he think his words could somehow justify the betrayal, make it hurt less? I wasn't sure if I was looking for closure or just someone to direct my frustration at, but I texted him back anyway. "Meet me at the bar. 1 hour." I hit send and then slipped my phone back into my pocket, stepping into the elevator. The ride down to the lobby was eerily quiet, the soft hum of the elevator's machinery the only sound. I watched the numbers tick down slowly, my thoughts a jumbled mess of memories, decisions, and the realization that everything I thought my life was had been shattered. By the time I reached the hotel bar, I had steeled myself. I wasn't here for Brandon's excuses or his pathetic attempts at making amends. I was here for one reason, to hear him admit face to face that he had been a part of the destruction of my marriage. I wanted him to look me in the eye and see the damage he'd helped cause. I walked in and immediately spotted him sitting at the far end of the bar, a half-empty glass of whiskey in front of him. He looked up as I approached, his eyes dark with regret, but I didn't care. Regret wasn't enough. "Not now. Jack," he said, his voice low and uncertain, as if he didn't know how to begin. I took the seat across from him, signaling the bartender for a drink. Talk, I said simply. I'm giving you 5 minutes. Brandon nodded, clearly nervous, his hands shaking as he took another sip of his drink. I don't even know where to start, he said, rubbing the back of his neck. I'm sorry. I know that probably doesn't mean anything to you right now, but I need to say it. I didn't set out to ruin your marriage, Jack. I swear I didn't. I stared at him, my expression blank. But you did. So let's skip the part where you play the victim and get to the truth. How long? He swallowed hard, his eyes flicking away for a moment before he answered. 6 months. Maybe a little longer. 6 months. Half a year of lies, sneaking around, and hiding in plain sight. It hit me harder than I expected. I had suspected it was bad, but hearing the actual timeline twisted the knife even deeper. And how did it start? I asked, keeping my voice steady even though I could feel the anger bubbling beneath the surface. He hesitated, glancing down at his drink before answering. We met through work. It was innocent at first. We'd grab coffee, chat. I didn't think much of it. But then one day, I don't know, it just changed. I raised an eyebrow, my patience wearing thin. Changed? What? You accidentally fell into bed with her? Brandon winced, clearly uncomfortable, but he didn't try to defend himself. I didn't plan for it to happen, Jack. It just did. One night after a work event, we kissed. I knew it was wrong, but once that line was crossed, it was like we couldn't stop. I leaned back in my chair, letting his words sink in. The part of me that had wanted to explode, to rage at him, was surprisingly quiet. Maybe it was because I'd already let go of the idea of us, me and Alina, working things out. Or maybe it was because Brandon was just pitiful. So what now? I asked, my voice colder than I expected. You think you'll ride off into the sunset with her? You think this story ends with you two living happily ever after? He looked down, shaking his head. No, I don't. I know I've messed up. I know what we did was wrong, but I never expected to fall for her. I scoffed, the bitterness rising in my throat. Fall for her? Do you hear yourself, Brandon? You fell for her? She's a liar, a cheater, and you're just the guy who got caught up in her mess. Trust me. She'll chew you up and spit you out just like she did with me. He didn't respond, just stared down at his hands, probably realizing the full weight of what he'd gotten himself into. I could see it in his eyes. He knew he wasn't special. He was just another pawn in Alina's game. I stood up, tossing some cash on the bar for my drink. Here's the thing, Brandon. You made your bed. Now you get to lie in it. But don't think for a second that this is going to end the way you hope. Alina's not the type to stay loyal. Not to you. Not to anyone. As I turned to leave, he called out, Jack, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. I really am sorry, he said, his voice strained with guilt. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. I walked out of the bar, leaving him there to drown in his own regret. The streets of Paris felt different this time. Less magical, less enchanting. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was walking away from something toxic. Something broken. And this time I wasn't looking back. The streets of Paris buzzed with life around me as I walked away from the bar, away from Brandon, and away from everything that had been weighing me down for so long. The cool evening air felt sharp against my skin, but it was nothing compared to the chill that had settled in my chest. It wasn't the cold of sadness or anger anymore. It was clarity, a cold, clear understanding that this chapter of my life was finally coming to an end. I made my way back to the hotel. I wasn't sure why. Maybe to grab my things, maybe for one last confrontation, or maybe just to see what kind of pathetic mess Alina had become in the wake of everything crashing down. Part of me wanted to leave without another word, but there was still something left unfinished. When I reached the hotel, I took the elevator back up, my heart pounding a little faster as I approached the room. Was she still crying? Was she packing up to run after me? Or had she finally accepted the truth that our marriage was done? I opened the door, and there she was, sitting on the bed, her suitcase open, clothes strewn everywhere. She wasn't crying anymore, but her face was puffy, her eyes red from the hours she had spent sobbing. She looked up as I entered, and for a moment, there was something like hope flickering in her eyes. But I wasn't here to give her any false promises. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice steady calm. "I'm booking a flight back tonight." Alina stood up quickly, stepping toward me. "Jack, wait, please. We can still." "No," I interrupted, holding up my hand. "There's no fixing this, Alina. You know that. I know that. I came back to tell you one last thing." Her face crumpled, but she forced herself to stay calm. "What? What do you want to say?" I took a deep breath, every word carefully chosen. "You don't love me. You never did, not in the way a wife should love her husband. And you know what? That's okay. I spent too long trying to make this work, trying to convince myself that we were happy. But I see now, we were living in two different worlds." She opened her mouth to argue, but I stopped her. "No, don't say anything. Just listen. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not sad. I'm just done. Done with the lies, the games, all of it. You want to be with Brandon? Fine. You two can figure out what the hell this mess means for you. But as for me, I'm moving on." Her eyes filled with fresh tears, but this time I didn't care. Her tears didn't affect me anymore. They were just another part of the act she had played for so long. "You'll regret this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You'll regret leaving me." I shook my head, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. "No, Alina. The only thing I regret is not seeing who you really were sooner. You're not the woman I thought I married. And that's on me for not realizing it earlier." She stepped closer, her voice growing more desperate. "But we built a life together. You can't just walk away from that. What about everything we've been through? Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I stared at her, feeling nothing but the cold truth. "It did mean something, once. But you threw it away, Alina. And I'm not going to keep chasing after something that's already gone." I could see the panic in her eyes now. She wasn't used to this, losing control. She had always been the one calling the shots, playing both sides, keeping me on the leash while she had her fun with Brandon. But now she was losing everything, and she didn't know how to handle it. "I can't be with him," she blurted out suddenly, her voice rising. "I was stupid, Jack. I made a mistake. Brandon doesn't matter to me. You're the one I want. I'll cut him off. I'll block him. We can start over, just you and me. Please." Her words hung in the air like poison, but I wasn't swallowing it this time. I knew she was lying again, scrambling to save herself from the mess she had created. Maybe she did want me now, but it wasn't out of love. It was out of fear, fear of being alone, fear of losing the life she had grown so comfortable with. I shook my head again, slower this time. "You're not doing this because you love me, Alina. You're doing this because you're scared. Scared of being alone. Scared of facing the consequences of your actions. But I'm done being your safety net." She was silent, staring at me with wide, tear-filled eyes. I could see it all hitting her now, the reality that I wasn't coming back, that this time it was really over. "I'm filing for divorce," I said, my voice steady. "I'll have my lawyer reach out to you. We can keep it clean, keep it simple. No need to drag this out any longer than it needs to be." Alina let out a small gasp, covering her mouth with her hand. "Divorce?" she whispered, as if the word had just slapped her in the face. "But Jack, please, I'll change. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. I swear." "It's too late," I said, cutting her off. "You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." I turned toward the door, feeling lighter with every step. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I felt like I had control over my life again. I wasn't trapped in the web of lies and deceit that Alina had spun. I was free. As I reached for the door, Alina's voice broke through one last time. "Jack, I love you." I paused, my hand on the doorknob, and glanced back at her. Her eyes were filled with tears, her body shaking with desperation. But I felt nothing, just cold clarity. "No, Alina," I said softly. "You don't. You love yourself." And with that, I walked out, closing the door on her and the life we once had. I didn't look back. The streets of Paris were alive with people, laughter, and light. but I walked alone, free from the chains of my past. I wasn't sure where I was headed next, but it didn't matter. Wherever I was going forward. And that was all I needed to know. The final goodbye wasn't just to Alina. It was to the man I used to be, the man who stayed silent, who let himself be deceived. That man was gone. And for the first time in a long time I felt alive.